and talk about science. I mean, who's ready for more science? And I wish everyone could applause, right?
You can hear it. Yeah.
Okay, good, good. Well, let me share my screen and we will jump right in and talk about science of these beautiful compounds. I mean, anthocyanins. We talk about eating the rainbow from our diet, and normally we don't do a good job. I like to joke that eating the rainbow, M&Ms and Skittles don't count, right? We're talking about plants and fruits and vegetables, and we don't get enough of this beautiful purple color from diet alone. So let's jump in and talk about how powerful these anthocyanins are, what they do for our gut and metabolic health. So jumping in, overall, we're not doing a good job for our metabolic health, and the trend is getting worse and worse. As you can see here, 90% of consumers agree that our modern lifestyles are taking a toll on our bodies, and the science backs it up. Right here, from this study published in 2019, only 1 in 8 people is considered metabolically healthy. There's actually another published study that just came out this year looking at cardiometabolic health with a lot of the similar factors. It's 1 in 14 individuals. So we're heading in the wrong direction. And even for those few people that think that they're good, they may be trending in the wrong direction and need a shift in their diet, in their lifestyle, in their supplementation to make improvements. So when we think metabolic health, I want you to look at that box on the corner of this slide. We're talking about things like blood sugar control, triglycerides, which are blood fats, HDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol, blood pressure, and then waist circumference, right? All of these factors were looked at in this study published in 2019. And you can see here that even within this study, those that had a healthy weight or a normal weight, 2/3 of them still did not have optimal metabolic health. Well, what about age, as you can see at the bottom, right? Some of us young guns, millennials, we're thinking, okay, we're good. We don't have to think about metabolism or metabolic health until we get, into our 50s or 60s or 70s or older. Think again, right? As you can see at the bottom, even 77% of those in the 20 to 39 age group did not have optimal metabolic health. And it gets even worse with aging, because we know with aging, it can impact your metabolism, but even for younger people. And what we're going to find out is that our modern lifestyle is really taking a toll on impacting metabolism, even for those with a healthy weight and for those that are young in age. Okay, metabolic health is a spectrum. I want you to think about your own life and where you are on the spectrum. A lot of us tend to overestimate how healthy we are in terms of our metabolism, right? All of these things that are impacting us. But be honest with yourself. And regardless of where you are, you can make changes and improvements to different things to improve your body's metabolism, which is these factors: blood pressure, blood sugar, insulin sensitivity, which is a marker of how effective insulin is at getting glucose inside of the cells. And usually what happens with aging and poor metabolism is you need more and more and more of that insulin to have that same normal healthy blood sugar response inside of the body. Cholesterol and triglycerides, some of these blood lipids. I'm not going to review all of the poor and the healthy choices, but just look at this list and think about in your own life, what are simple things that you can do to improve how active you are? Maybe improving your diet in simple ways, getting better sleep, lots of fruits and vegetables. The average intake of fruits and vegetables in America is 2 to 3 servings per day. The minimum recommendation is 5 per day, and only 1 in 10 adults is getting that minimum recommendation. And that is when you include fruit juice and vegetable juice, which in my opinion should probably not be counted. And so we're very deficient from diet alone. Managing stress, not smoking, right? All of these things play a role. So the major problem with all of this is what we like to define as our modern lifestyle. Modern lifestyle is what we live in today. And we have,
Anna,
yes,
could we get you to slow down just a little bit for a translation?
yes, perfect. Sorry about that. Okay, so the problem is our modern lifestyle. We have streaming our favorite shows, right? We're not being very active because of that or many other reasons. Staying up late and getting up early. We're not getting good quality sleep. I like to mention here that even one bad night's sleep can impact your body's metabolism the next day and how effective insulin is at doing its job. And that compounds over time. Working long hours, if we're really stressed out, stress has a really negative impact on our metabolism. And we have stress from so many different sources. And then poor diets, right? We're eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of sugar, a lot of fat. Just a few stats to keep in mind. About 60% of our diet in America is from ultra processed foods, okay? We're not talking whole foods, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, ultra processed. We're eating more sugar today than ever before. And these things are really playing a toll on our metabolism inside the body. Okay, what is an example of metabolic health, right? We could talk about each one of these, but let's hone in just a little bit on glucose. So when we consume all of the good stuff, I want you to visualize and imagine, you know, that yummy carbohydrate-rich food or meal, right? That's rich in starch or sugars, okay? We all know what those are. Cookies, cakes, sodas, whatever it is for you, what that vice is. Well, those carbohydrates, they're broken down into simple sugars called glucose inside of the blood. Now, when glucose starts to spike inside of the bloodstream, it releases this effect, this hormone called insulin. Now, normally the body responds really well, but when the body is overwhelmed with really high peaks of glucose or really high consistent levels of glucose inside of the blood, your body needs more and more insulin to be able to grab that and use it for fuel inside of the body. The problem is that when it becomes overburdened, that excess energy source of glucose is, instead of used as energy, can now be triggering fat storage, and it decreases your ability to actually burn fat inside of the body. So it really leads to this cascade of negative effects from our diet alone. Just to add to this, what about stress? When we're stressed out, the body releases cortisol. It's your primary fight or flight hormone inside of the body. That's good if you are next to a bear and your body stresses out because you break down all of that fuel for immediate energy. It's a survival instinct. However, if we have that chronic stress, we're consistently increasing that cortisol. Well, what cortisol is doing is having that internal battle with insulin, because insulin wants to store things for the future. Cortisol wants to break it down and use it immediately. And so what happens is this battle, in addition to stress, can sometimes lead to overeating and snacking and more foods, and probably the right or the wrong types of foods. I mean, just think about when you're stressed out, what kind of foods are you going for? Is it going to be this beautiful, colorful salad with lean protein? Or is it going to be the cookies and the bad stuff that's in the drawer? Well, it's all this negative cycle of impacting your body's metabolism in a bad way. And so managing stress is going to be critical for our body's metabolic response. Okay, so there's a lot of solutions out that exist. What are things that we can do? What are foods that we can consume? And one of the most powerful solutions is going to be anthocyanins for our metabolic health. And they have different colors, right? We have the reds from things like strawberries, but we also have some of these dark purples, almost black-like colors from a lot of other fruits and vegetables, like black currant or black rice. But just think about when you go to the store and you buy your carrots. Are they purple or are they orange, right? What about cabbage? Is it going to be green or is it purple? We're not getting a lot of these anthocyanins from diet alone. And there are different types of anthocyanins in different colors of these fruits and vegetables and plants. Now, thinking about your diet, you probably fall on a spectrum, but when you look at average intakes, whether it be seasonal intake or whatever it might be, look at the United States, it's about 10 milligrams per day. You compare that to the clinically effective dose of 215, it's 20 times below where we need to be, right? So from diet alone, we're not getting an effective dose, especially of the right types of anthocyanins to really maximize metabolic health in the body. So when we talk about these anthocyanins and how they change different tissues, as you can see on the bottom, anthocyanins help shift towards a healthier metabolic state, okay? And when we talk about metabolism, we're talking about these things like oxidative stress, inflammation, glucose, insulin, cholesterol, right? All the things we've been focusing on. So think about in the fat tissue, what anthocyanins do is they help to increase fatty acid oxidation. That's important because within fat tissue, you have fat cells that generally build up more fat as it gets older or with time and with age. But if you can increase the fat burn inside of that tissue, you can have better metabolic health. What about muscle tissue? Muscle we know is very active, and it helps to increase the glucose uptake with anthocyanins. That's significant because when you think about the muscle, you want the glucose. So when you have those carbohydrates and they break down into simple sugars inside of the body, you want to take that up into tissues instead of being stored as fat. So this is a positive, good thing for your metabolism. What about the pancreas? Well, the pancreas makes insulin from beta cells, and their function increases or is more efficient at doing its job. So there's benefits here for glucose and insulin metabolism too. What about the liver? Well, the liver is an important tissue. We know it's involved in detoxification. It's very important. But over time, there can be damage and there can be fat that accumulates over time. However, with anthocyanins, the research shows that one key mechanism is that it decreases the fat from accumulating inside of the liver, showing improved metabolic efficiency inside of the body. That's a wonderful thing and a good thing because fat buildup inside of tissues is usually called visceral fat. Now that's different from the subcutaneous fat, which is around the skin on the outside of the body. This visceral fat is going to be a lot more dangerous and harmful for our metabolism. And so that's something we want to look at in terms of the mechanism of how these anthocyanins work. Now, switching gears, let's take this at a bigger scale. I already talked about a few of these markers in the liver, in the fat, in the muscle, and in the pancreas. And it's not important or critical for you to memorize what all of these things mean, right? CPT1A, RBP4. Don't worry about all that. Just know that these are factors that impact things related to your metabolism. So glucose, insulin, oxidative stress, right? These same themes of metabolism. Look at how anthocyanins work. You can see that purple in this graph represents an increase in the expression of the activity of that pathway or that marker of biology inside the body. And then you can see with that orange color, there's a decrease. Well, this is significant and important because how does this compare to something that we know is really good for your metabolism? And if you had to think about, of all the different things, what is one thing you could do that would be good and healthy for it? Well, exercise. As you can see, this metabolically healthy choice, if you look at the bottom there with the asterisk, exercise. Look at how similar the effect is on your metabolism when you compare exercise to anthocyanins. Now, I want to point out this is the direction of how these things are moving, these markers in the body. The magnitude of the effect can vary and can differ. So the point here is that, look, anthocyanins are very powerful. They are moving metabolism in a similar way to exercise. And I should mention here, there is added value and added benefits of combining exercise with anthocyanins. The point here is don't just take anthocyanins and forget exercise. No, there's added benefits by combining. The more good things we can do for metabolism, the better off it's going to be. Okay, this is where I geek out just a little bit and talk a little bit about some of the innovation that we've done. So it's been 7 years of research and development in looking at the science behind anthocyanins and what they do. And it really has been a discovery process for us as we've published many of these studies and these findings with exclusive insights that we have found and published in the scientific literature. Now it begins with a selection process. We knew anthocyanins are good and important, but which ones were the best? And what we found is blackcurrant, bilberry, and black rice were rich in cyanidin and delphinidin. Now, these are the types of anthocyanins that were the most effective. I don't have a slide here to share with you, but there's other types of anthocyanins like pelargonidin, petunidin, and others that weren't as effective. In fact, it wasn't even close. And so we screened and found that these certain subclasses were critical in getting the best and optimal results for your body's metabolism. After that discovery, we then put it to the test. And we started with preclinical work. This is a 14-week study, and I want to point you to that graph on the right. So the C stands for the control diet. This is just the normal, healthy control diet that we want to mimic. The control with anthocyanins simply adds the anthocyanins. The high fat really represents this modern lifestyle or bad, poor diets. This is what we don't want to see. But then when you add anthocyanins to that same high-fat diet, what you can see here for what's called FITC dextrin, just know that it is a measurement of the permeability of cells. You can see that the high-fat diet with anthocyanins really reverses that effect and lessens that negative change in the permeability of the cells in the high-fat diet. Now, permeability, I think, is a term for all of us to really understand. When it comes to these intestinal cells that we have one layer. It's one layer as this barrier to the outside world. And this layer of cells are what are called selectively permeable, okay? This means that they allow some stuff in and they're supposed to keep some stuff out. But with inflammation or damage to these cells, what happens is that they become more and more permeable or more and more leaky, and that's allowing stuff in that we don't want to see get in. So this is the beginning of a shift in the health of these intestinal cells. So what does that translate to? Well, if we can have healthier intestinal cells, it's going to allow less endotoxins in. As you can see here, when you compare the control to the high-fat diet, you can see more endotoxins getting in, but you compare that same high-fat diet with anthocyanins, it's really mitigating that response and lessening those endotoxins from getting in. Well, what about the microbiome? The microbiome is really a hot topic, and we know that there's more and more science about the importance of the microbiome and how that not only impacts just the gut, but how the microbiome impacts the rest of the body. Well, here what we have is looking at the ratio of firmicutes to Bacteroides. And you can see with the control compared to the high-fat diet, there really is that shift where it's increasing the number of bad bacteria. But if you compare that to the high-fat diet with anthocyanins, there's a really incredible reversal. And you can see that it's shifting those microbes in the gut where you see more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff. And that's exactly what we want to see. Well, what about tight junction proteins? Maybe you've heard about these, maybe you haven't. But these are proteins that are like the glue that hold these intestinal cells together. And what we can see here in examples of occludin, zonulin 1, and claudin 1, you can see that with the control diet, it's really good, has a healthy level of these tight junctions. You compare that to the black bar, which is the high-fat diet, it really decreases those tight junction proteins to hold these cells together. However, with that same modern diet with anthocyanins, you can see that it mitigates that effect and has a really healthy response in terms of keeping these tight junctions healthy, which is going to support overall gut health inside of the body. So really, really fun mechanisms of action in the gut. So this is where our science began. We said, you know what? This is an incredible gut health solution. These anthocyanins are all about the gut. But then we continued to study, well, if we can actually improve gut health, what effect does that have inside of the body? And this is part of this discovery process where we wanted to see, well, does healing and repairing the gut, does that have an effect on your body's metabolism? And this is what we saw in this preclinical study where we measured changes in glucose and insulin metabolism. Now, with the GTT, this is a measure where you give glucose and you measure how much glucose spikes inside. And what you can see with the control, it's a normal, healthy response. However, you compare that to that black bar of the high-fat diet, it really spikes that glucose. Or in other words, there's a higher glucose curve, even with the same amount of glucose being given. but you compare that to the high-fat diet with anthocyanins, it mitigates that effect. In other words, there's less of a curve, there's less of a spike. You have a healthier glucose curve. Well, the ITT, looking at this other bar graph, this is a measure of how much insulin is produced from the same amount of glucose. So when you get that glucose, you get that control level of insulin, that amount. You compare that to the high-fat diet, it's increasing the amount of insulin. Now, what this means is that you need more and more of that insulin to be able to control the amount of glucose that's been given. You compare that with a high-fat diet plus anthocyanins, it really mitigates that response and has a healthy glucose and insulin response. Now, what about the liver? As you can see here at the bottom, I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, in the liver, you can see when you compare the control to the high-fat diet, those white little spots, that is the buildup of fat inside of the tissue. Like I already mentioned before, that fat buildup is called visceral fat. That's no bueno for my Spanish friends. We don't want to see that, right? But if you compare that to the high-fat diet with anthocyanins, look at how it mitigates that response, okay? This is very powerful and impactful in terms of good signs and signals of how the body's metabolism is being improved. So there's more studies, I know. Hang on with me. So I'm about finished here, but I just love these studies, and these studies really help to prove science and innovation and how these anthocyanins are working. But in this study, it was 46 healthy obese individuals who are about 43 years of age. So they're a healthy group, and they took for 8 weeks this blend of anthocyanins and fiber. And what they did is they saw a change in their microbiome. So you can see that there is a shift in the firmicutes and Bacteroides. There's less of firmicutes and more Bacteroides at the end of the study, proving that there is a positive change in the microbiome. In addition to the microbiome change, we also noted a change in HbA1c, okay? This is a long-term marker of blood glucose control. And you can see at baseline, it's about 5.5 millimoles per liter. There is a shift or a reduction in that to about 5.3 at the end of the study. It's a very subtle but still significant change where you can see that there is a positive trend or improvement in the body's long-term blood glucose control. Very, very subtle but powerful and important finding, in my opinion, and actually something that when this study was published, the researchers or the editors suggested that we highlight because of how powerful this finding is. Last study, this is a human acute study who got to take that wonderful, delicious sandwich. Okay, I don't know, I can't vouch for how delicious the sandwich was, but it looked exactly like that. That's actually a picture of the sandwiches that were consumed from this actual clinical study. So it's high in fat, it's high in carbs, it's high in sugars that are breaking down. And we wanted to measure the metabolic impact in 25 healthy individuals between the ages of 19 and 35. So these are healthy, no metabolic abnormalities. And we wanted to see if we could detect a difference in a healthy population. And imagine if we could detect that, what we could see in different populations or different groups, right? With different weights, different ages, different metabolic baselines, so to speak. So just keep that in mind as we look at the result of this study. So the result, when we compare the placebo to the anthocyanins, you can see a reduction in endotoxins. You can see a reduction in glucose area under the curve, or the glucose curve that you see inside of the body. We see a reduction in TNF alpha. This is a marker of inflammation. And we see a reduction in triglycerides area under the curve. This is a metabolic improvement after 1 day, okay? 1 day. Just imagine 1 week or 2 weeks or 2 months or 4 months, even with different baselines of metabolic health. This is in a healthy population. So we know that these anthocyanins work immediately, but we also know that the effect can compound over time to really support the body's gut and metabolic health. Okay, in summary, I know I geeked out over some of those studies and they're incredible, but let's just sum this all up with what anthocyanins do. I really love calling them superfoods because they really are. Not all plants, not all fruits, not all vegetables are going to be called superfoods. Anthocyanins are, because of how few we get in the diet and how powerful they are. These are just two of the key mechanisms. They help to promote a healthy microbiome and promoting tight junctions in the GI tract. Well, what is the result of doing this for you inside of the body? Well, the result is it helps to reduce the endotoxins. It helps to support a healthy inflammatory balance, and it helps to support metabolic health. I like to think about this as kind of this cascade of effects. I mean, imagine this chain link that continues on and on, right? There is this cascade of effects when it comes to gut health and how that impacts the rest of the body, from inflammation to metabolic health. So if you can help to heal and support the gut on the inside, it's going to cascade to better metabolic health and supporting all of these aspects of metabolism that we've talked about today. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Dr. Sierra. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Nothing like feeding our body what it needs, right, to protect and heal itself. Okay. We're just going to take a couple second break here, check on our translator, Oscar, and we'll be right back with you for the second part of our show. Oscar's good. Okay. Fantastic. All right, guys. Well, hopefully you've got your hand cramp from making so many copious notes there and learning so much from Tanner. We're going to jump into a little bit more detail on how you can achieve high anthocyanins in your diet and product that we have called Meta. So let me pass it back to you, Tanner.
Sure. ageLOC Meta. I mean, here's my high level pitch. I love it. I've been taking ageLOC Meta now for several months, and I've noted several improvements to my body's metabolism. I love what it's doing. And more importantly, I love what I'm hearing in the field and around the world from people taking ageLOC Meta. It's actually our #1 seller around the globe. And I think for good reason, because look, there's huge demand for gut health and metabolic health solutions, right? We're trending in the wrong direction and we need good solutions. And we have something incredible. And I love everything that I'm hearing about this.
Me too. I couldn't be more excited. And when you said cyanidin and delphinidin, I did a deep dive when I was like, what's an anthocyanin? And I need to know about this. And I got really excited about what I found. So couple of questions. You're done with slides, correct?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So let's jump right into a couple of questions that I got from the field. And if you guys have specific questions, drop them in the Zoom chat if you're watching on Zoom. And for those of you watching live on the One Team Global page, if someone wants to text those to me, I can field a couple if we end up with time. But I've got a key 5 that kept coming up through other field leaders and other people that had texted me in prep for this meeting. So first and foremost, people want to know, because it just says on the bottle, take 4 a day. So do you have a recommendation as far as, do you take 4 all at once, or 2 and 2, or all 4 before a big meal, since it works that quickly? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And 4 a day, that's going to be in the US. We do have different delivery formats around the world. So just keep in mind, the recommendation is going to be to follow the label claim of how much to take per day. But for the US, 4 per day, we didn't specify to take with or without a meal, because you can get results either way. And we didn't specify taking it all at once or spread out throughout the day, because you can get great results either way. And in fact, some people like to experiment and see what works best for them, because some people feel a difference taking it one way or another. And so that's just something to consider. My personal recommendation and how I take it is I take all 4 at the same time of the day with my largest meal, based on the human study where we see some immediate metabolic changes and benefits. So that's how I take it, but to each their own. Just make sure that you take the full dose to experience those wonderful benefits.
Okay, I love that. Now, one question, in addition to that piece, can you take more than 4 a day?
That is a good question. And one that comes up quite frequently, actually. I do want to be clear here, because a lot of people think that, hey, if I take double the dose, does that mean that I get double the benefits? It doesn't, because the full dose is a clinically effective dose, right, of 215 milligrams of anthocyanins, which is a lot higher than the regular diet. And keeping that in mind, even before we launched this product, I'm going to go on a tangent here. I was so impressed with how anthocyanins work in the body and how powerful they are. I went online to try to find it before we even developed our own supplement, and I couldn't find it. I found some black rice, but most of it wasn't even standardized to anthocyanins. So it was just crushed up black rice. I found some bilberry, but some of it, most of it wasn't standardized. Some of it was, but it had much lower levels of anthocyanins. And the same thing for black currant. In fact, a lot of the black currant was for the oil benefit and not for the anthocyanins and standardized for that. And so I couldn't even find what we were offering to the world because keeping in mind, look, getting the right dose is critical, right? You can't expect the same benefit by taking 1 a day versus 4 a day. That said, is it safe to take a little bit extra if you want to try that? Absolutely. Just don't expect double as good because it is a clinically effective dose, which is part of our success quality process.
I love that. Okay, super helpful, and not shocked that we would be one of the first to market with a great product with high doses of anthocyanins. So, gotta leave it to Pharmanex, always being on the cutting edge of research. So, thank you. Okay, another question that was really popular was, do you see accelerated benefits or a synergistic benefit when you take it with New Biome, one of our other gut health products?
That's a fantastic question. I would love to actually conduct that clinical study with New Biome and with Meta because it is a very popular combination and for good reason. Because look, they're both gut health products. And that's a popular question we get is, hey, I only need one gut health product, right? Well, the answer is it depends. In this case, New Biome is a gut health product that's really focused on digestion and overall digestive health. Whereas with Meta, it's a gut health product that can shift the microbiome, but the end result is more about your core metabolism and overall metabolic health. And so we know that digestive health and metabolic health, they work together. They're very complementary benefits. So absolutely, we would expect added value by taking both these products. I love both of them personally. I mean, I have both of them in my cabinet, New Biome and Meta, and for good reason. They're actually doing really well as a companion.
Awesome. I feel the same way with my results personally. Okay. And then another popular one was, how can you tell if it's working, and in what time frame do you think is realistic to tell people, to expect those results?
Yeah, it's a good question. I recommend a minimum of 4 months to give it a chance. That's based on the research and the science. However, it's going to vary depending on you, your baseline health, your metabolic health, where you're at in terms of how long it takes. For some people, they're going to notice benefits very quickly. For other people, they're going to notice benefits and it's going to take much longer, even more than 4 months, right? So just keep that in mind. We're all different. We're all special. And in terms of it, what was the first part of your question?
How can you tell if it's working?
Yes, sorry. So I want to be clear here because some benefits can be felt and will be felt by many consumers, right? That relate to overall metabolic health. Metabolic health is how energy is produced and used and stored inside of the body. And so energy seems to be one of those things that a lot of people feel a difference with. However, that being said, a lot of people may not notice subtle changes in their metabolism, even though we know it's happening from the science, right? So some of these metabolic health biomarkers that we talk about and even list in the product information page, right? We list them as glucose, insulin, blood pressure, cholesterol, right, et cetera. Some of these subtle changes people don't necessarily feel, but we know it's still happening. And so even if you don't feel certain things or notice certain things, we know that the science is still working in your favor because of how powerful these are and how proven these are when using the proper dose and the right types of these anthocyanins.
I love that. Yep. And I love the 4-month window too. I've been saying 3. So that's really helpful that it's not just you're going to see the results clinically you see immediately, but to see those longer term results, make that commitment. Okay. Would you suggest this being an everyday product then, or would it be just for a 4-month window for someone to get that metabolic shift? Is there value in taking it daily, long term, I guess?
Yes. My recommendation is to take it forever if you can, right? I mean, that's going to be ideal because that's the thing with nutrition, right? Being consistent is key. I mean, you can improve your body, but if you want to continue to see those improvements or maintain those improvements long term, if you stop doing the things that you were doing to get those results, then your body stops receiving those same benefits and those results. That being said, are you going to be better off just taking it for 4 months versus not taking it at all? Absolutely. I mean, do whatever you can, ideally long term, but if you can only take it for a few months, take it for a few months and see how you feel. And what a lot of people do and notice with the results and the benefits, they're like, hey, I'm going to try just for a few months. And they're like, oh, wow, this is a game changer for me. They continue to take it. Or even some people I've spoken to, they stop taking it, and then they all of a sudden that their body starts to change, and they notice some of these subtle changes they didn't realize until they went off the product, and they're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize all of these changes for me. I'm going to go back on and take it again. So I'm a big fan of Age Lock Meta, as you can tell.
I love that. Isn't that the truth? People don't know what they've got till it's gone, right? Okay. And then one last question. For the study saying, 1 in 8 are metabolically healthy, or in the newer study, 1 in 14, for that one individual, would you still recommend for the other benefits that they'd get from this to be on that product?
Oh, absolutely. This is something that I believe is good for everybody, because we all want to believe that we're that 1 in 8 or that 1 in 14. But even when you look at the data and the stats for those people that do really have optimal metabolic health and they meet all of those parameters for it, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're trending in the right direction, right? I mean, you think about your own tests and your own exams that you get and looking at some of these biomarkers, right? You might be in a good range, but what about a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago? When you look at that trend, which way are you heading? And this is something that I truly believe is something important for us. I mean, when you look at the data behind what's causing, all of these metabolic changes in all of us, it's not good. The stats are piled against us. And so this is something I believe is good for everybody, whether you believe you're on the good or the bad end of that spectrum.
I love that. Brilliant. Okay. Well, that's the questions that I had. Tanner, I cannot thank you enough for being here and sharing everything that you've got and making it digestible for everybody, because I couldn't be more excited about this product either. It's kind of lit me up, with how many lives we can touch and how many people might need this and find benefit in it. So thank you for all that you do and helping convey this to the thousands that are watching it live on our Facebook group and will watch the replay too. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for being here. So appreciate your pivot to the following day. Sorry about yesterday, but I'm glad you're able to get what you needed here today. All right. Thank you, Tanner, so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.